Take your Bibles, if you would, please, and your little message outline that we've got there. Our pastor always had a good message. I don't ever remember one that wasn't right on it. And I remember the first time I walked back there, shaking hands on the way out. And my exact words were, "Pastor, I love you because what you preach." That's what makes you folks special, unique, and that's why I say I can love you, because of what you believe. Now, there may be some of you here that don't really grasp what the truth of the gospel really is. Now, if you've been in Sunday school, Brother Chris made that pretty clear out of the book of Hebrews. By the way, if you want to start reading the Bible in a manner of studying and not just reading through from beginning to end, first read all of the book of Genesis. What do you got there, 50 chapters? Then you read the Gospel of John. Then you read the book of Romans. Then you read the Gospel of John. Then you read the book of Romans. Then you read the Gospel of John, and you read the book of Romans. And then you read 1st and 2nd Corinthians and go from there into the book of Hebrews. Hebrews is like steak. It's, I'll tell you what, it'll make Gospel of John come alive. Good stuff. The reason I can say that I love this church is because of what you believe. If you really believe the gospel of Christ, the finished work of Christ, salvation is Christ plus nothing. One thing, and it's not a work. Bible's clear on that. It's to believe. It's to believe. John chapter 3 and verse 18 says, everybody knows 3:16, but 18 says, "He that believeth on him is not condemned." You want to know if you're condemned or not? There you go. Do you believe on him? Do you believe on him? Now, when I say believe on him, I'm speaking about Christology, Christ, the doctrine of Christ, who he is, what he did. He's the creator God. He created you. And then, when we fell, okay, you can go back and blame it on Adam, blame it on Eve. But we are what we are. No one here was born without a sin nature. You have it. And when you believe on the finished work of Christ, as far as the east is from the west, so far hath he removed our transgressions from us. There's a lot of religious people. There's a lot of people in churches today. They're not going to hear the truth. They might feel warm and fuzzy for a brief period of time, but they're going to go out the door at the end of the service not knowing for sure where they're going to go when they die. Now, we got a funeral this afternoon, and Brother Thomas used to sit right over in that area. I didn't know him real well, other than the fact he was in Sunday school and I greet him, say hi and all that. But there was, he knew the Lord. There's going to be a difference. There's a big difference between the death of a Christian, a saint, and the death of a sinner. Now, we're all sinners. But how do you become a saint? By believing on Christ, have the righteousness of God. Oh, there's a whole lot of things you could put on there. Message this morning, why a Christian should not fear death. I've often wondered, and I've been with several, quite a few actually, not in recent years, but been with a number of people when they left this world heading out into eternity. And you may be there in that hospital room or in that hospice room, and maybe they've got the individual on morphine or whatever because they're getting real close and they're trying to keep the pain at bay. And I've been with some of those people that I knew were saved. I've also been with some that I didn't know. Sometimes they come to you a little late in the game, so to speak. What's it like when you breathe your last breath and you go, well, for the Christian, absent from the body and what? Present with the Lord. Instantaneous. And where do you go? Well, past the first heaven. What's that, 50, 60 miles up, something like that? So through the second heaven, that's outer space, to the third heaven, according to 2 Corinthians, which is the abode of God. And you go there in the twinkling of an eye. There's a transition that takes place. Back in 1963, my dad bought a brand new Chevy station wagon. $3,200, brand new. Anybody here old enough to know what 6 cylinders and 3 on the tree was? There you go. It had a brand new option in it, never been seen before. Seat belts. Now, did we use them? No, of course not. We sat on them. But my dad and mom and my younger brothers and sisters, I was the oldest of 4. I was 11 years old in 1963. We go out for a ride on some of these back roads in Vermont. Now, we already lived in a town of 957 people, and there was paved roads in town. But you go a couple miles, they called it gravel, but don't believe it, it was really mud. And we get to going, and my dad would find what we used to call a tickle bump. Anybody here ever driven over a tickle bump? You get to going real fast, and you, woo! And us kids would laugh and carry on. My dad would find another place he could do that, and he'd do it again. I often wondered, see, I've never done it before. I'm still here. I often wondered if death for the Christian, kind of like a tickle bump. Absent from the body, present with the Lord. Christians shouldn't fear death. Now, I can't be an authority in one sense because I've never died. Not physically, okay? But I've seen some people that did. Now, I know this is a little extra biblical, and you have to watch out for extra biblical things because the Bible is the authority. But a couple of instances where we watch somebody pass away, and it just causes you to think. My wife says she's been a nurse for 100 years. Please do not believe her. It hasn't really been 100 years. It's probably been about 45 or so. Remember when she used to work shift work in a hospital, And she worked second shift some of the time. And I remember telling about a lady that she had to take care of, an elderly lady. And this lady kept throwing, the nurses would come along and cover her back up, but she was always throwing and kicking the bed sheets off from her feet, complaining that her feet were hot. And my wife would cover her up, or the other nurses would cover her up. I think you changed shifts, and she died when you weren't there. Isn't that right? Yeah. So anyway, they covered her up. She kicked them off. She's hot. She's too hot. Well, she got to the point where she was screaming, "My feet are hot." Well, the next morning when my wife came back in, whatever shift she was on, that lady had passed away. It just made me wonder if she was in the process of leaving and maybe her feet were getting hot. Now that's extra biblical. Okay, you can take that with a grain of sand. There was another instance in the same hospital where a man who used to run what was called Blueberry Mountain Bible Camp, and he ministered to young people, and church groups would go up there, Bible camp, up in the mountains in Maine. And this guy loved the Lord, and he went into the hospital where he passed away. And before he passed away, he said, "Listen, you hear it? Singing. I've never heard singing. They're singing like that. Never heard them sing like that." And he died a little while later. Okay, that's extra biblical. Is that authoritative? No. But it's just a couple of instances where you're involved with people or know people and you're close to a situation. It just makes you think. And for me, I'd rather much hear the good singing as I left than have my feet burning.
That's rich.
You understand what I'm saying? Now that's extra biblical. That's not in the script. That's just an experience we have. I'm not an experience-oriented type person or a feel type person. Go by what it says. But the death of a Christian is vastly different than the death of a non-believer. What gives me and causes me to love you, even though I don't know many of you real intimately or closely, but you keep coming back for truth. You stick. And that says to me, you believe the same thing I believe. By the way, Sunday school class was excellent. I like a little meat once in a while. John 3:36 says this: "He that believeth on the Son hath everlasting life, and he that believeth not the Son," look at this, "shall not see life, but the wrath of God abideth on him." Now, life is tough enough. By the way, I don't know how anybody makes it through life without the Lord. They try all the wrong things. Drugs, alcohol, immorality, riches, materialism, mammon, whatever. None of it satisfies. But I wouldn't want the wrath of God on me. But when the wrath of God is on somebody, temporarily in hell, and more permanently in the lake of fire, I believe personally that everybody in the lake of fire is going to be insane. They will have lost it. There's absolutely no hope. When you got up this morning, you had some kind of hope in you. Don't you have hope for the future? I mean, and our hope ought to be in Christ, right? All things flow out of that. Every good and perfect gift cometh from above. Okay? But if you take away hope from somebody, it's vastly different for the believer and the non-believer. 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 6, Paul said this, "For I'm now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand." Death is a departure, point number one. One of the definitions of that is to pull up anchor, and you're headed out. It's a departure. Philippians chapter 1 and verse 23 says, "For I am in a strait betwixt two, having a desire to depart," Paul speaking again, "and to be with Christ, which is far better." Now, we've been through a number of funeral services of late. It's been a season for it. I guess it's not the right word. It's not I guess the good part of it, and that doesn't sound right, good part of it. But the positive, I guess, is of late, the ones we've done here, no doubt in my mind, all of those are in heaven. Amen. The one we'll do this afternoon is in heaven, absent from the body, present with the Lord. Amen. Now, some of you out here will understand this, some of you won't. I have a tremendous weight on me. Doesn't look like it other than I'm overweight. Because I'm responsible. I have a great responsibility when I stand behind the sacred desk, the pulpit of wood. Notice it's not made of gold or silver or, some of these new fancy ones are plexiglass and you can look right through them. Well, some of them aren't plexiglass. They're actually made out of Lexan so they can be bulletproof. But anyway, that might be a good idea, come to think of it. But there's a great responsibility of putting out truth. See, at this point I might say, aren't you glad you're saved? Amen. And you better know that. You better be absolutely sure, 101%. And if you're sure of that, and you know that you know that you know, because your salvation is based on Him, not on you, you are part of a very large gathering. Amen. Now, it's going to be reunion time when we get there. Man, I know a lot of people up there already. What a reunion time. When we all are gathered there, finally, as the bride of Christ, there's going to be some sadness because there's going to be some people there that we wished were there, but they're not. But remember, in the song that was sang, God shall wipe away all tears from our eyes. Notice that comes in the very last portion of the Bible, not further back. We still have some tears that we're going to have to shed before we ever get there. But death is a departure. You up anchor and you're leaving. Now, I don't know whether it's going to be like a tickle bump where you're kind of what's it like to stop breathing earthly air and seeing earthly things? And maybe as your vision fades and you breathe your last breath and you pass out of this world and you go to heaven, angels must be fast. You read the account of the rich man and then Lazarus in hell. And the angel carries him into Abraham's bosom, okay? They must be, of course, they're strong. The one angel slew 186,000 Assyrian soldiers. That was one angel. But Must be it's going to be a quick trip. What's it going to be like? To stop breathing what we breathe and start breathing heavenly air. I wonder what the composition of that's going to be, and seeing through new eyes what heaven is like. Folks, that's where you're headed. But if you don't know Jesus, the description of the other place makes me sick. I fear for a lot of people I know. Number two, death is a transition. I remember I was associate pastor of Bethany Baptist Church, 250 Northeast 56th Court, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And an assistant pastor and an associate pastor are similar. They both get to do everything that the pastor doesn't want to do. So I was one of them once. And I remember an assistant pastor, there was one associate, there was me, and there was two assistants. We had all been together in Bible college, and we all ended up in the same church for a while. And his name was Paul Johnson, by the way. Not our Paul Johnson, but Paul Johnson. And he wanted to be a missionary to China, and he was in the process of memorizing the whole Bible. I've lost track of him in the last few years. I think he's a professor at a Bible college now. I don't know if he made it to China or not. But he called on the phone, and he had a very matter-of-fact way of speaking, talking. And he just said, "Alan, I forgot to tell you." Okay. "Your brother died, or your mother called yesterday. Your brother just died in a car wreck." "Okay, and you forgot to tell me?" "Okay, that's all right, Paul, whatever." So I call back up there, and at this particular time I was in the hospital. My wife was in the hospital having our number 2 child. And so I left the hospital and got on a plane and flew back up to the state of Vermont at that time to do my brother's funeral. Now, I'd been there a month before doing my grandfather's funeral. Now, I'd only been in the ministry a short amount of time. This is 1977. And I got started in 73. And I just done my grandfather's funeral. He walked around telling everybody Jesus, he's having Jesus in your heart. He was a joy to be around. But then my brother is killed, and I'm thinking, one soul is leaving as another one is born into this life. It's just, people come, people go. But what happens to you while you're here determines on where you're going to go. So don't let it just pass over your head when I'm talking about it this morning. You better be sure that you know Jesus Christ. And how do you get to know Him? You read His Word and you believe on Him. You don't believe in yourself what you can do. If I might put it like this, real bluntly, you can't do nothing. There's nothing you can do to save yourself. Absolutely nothing. All our righteousness is as what? Filthy rags. And what is the context that was talking about? Well, the context of it is, it was the filthy rags that were wrapped around the leper. And the first things that would decompose on you while you're alive, if you had leprosy, it was a kiss of death. They couldn't treat leprosy back then. The Lord was the only one that could treat that. And so your fingers your appendages all fall off first, toes, fingers, whatever. So as they would start to get all yucky, wind bandages around it till they won't absorb anymore. And they take those rags off and they throw them down, they put more clean ones on. All your righteousness is as filthy rags, those rags that were wound around a leper. Nothing you can do to save yourself. Jesus Christ is the only one that can save. Amen. Not by works of righteousness which we have done, but according to his mercy he saved us. Death is a transition. 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 1. Look at that verse if you would. For we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Verse 8, we are confident, I say, verse 8 of the same chapter, 5:8. We are confident, I say, and willing rather, to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord. So if a Christian dies, it's like instantaneously, if you will. If you take a gun and shoot at a chair, I don't mean a puffy chair, I mean just a wooden chair, you're probably going to see a hole and some splinters, and it happens real fast. What comes first, the bullet or the hole? Well, it's the bullet. But the point is, it happens so fast you can't see it. And when you pass from this life, your soul leaves your body, and you pass to the next life, it's going to be real quick. And there is no opportunity on the other side. You got to know him. Number 3, it's a coronation. 2 Timothy 4 and verse 8. Actually, you could start in verse 6. For Paul said in verse 6 of 2 Timothy 4, for I'm now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. I've fought a good fight. I've finished my course. I have kept the faith. And then in verse 8, henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, not an angel, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all them also that love is appearing. Folks, you're going to get a crown. And by the way, how many crowns you get is how faithful you are. And what are you going to do with the crown? You're going to put it on your head and march all around and say, look at my crown. Nope. You're going to cast them at Jesus' feet. It'll be like a thank you note. You can't pay for your salvation, but we're going to want to worship him. See, right now, in a worship service, you worship him in spirit and in truth. And one day we're going to be worshiping him face to face. I don't think I have much dignity anyway. Most people that meet me, instead of being dignified, sometimes they get horrified, okay? But I know I won't have any in that day, because if I can get to him, I'll be kissing his feet. Just be glad to be there. It's a coronation. Matthew 16:27, very quickly. For the Son of Man is come in his glory of the Father with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his works. There's lots and lots of verses that deal with that, by the way. 1 Corinthians 3 and verse 14. If any man's work abide, and it's talking about the context there of the judgment seat of Christ. It starts in 1 Corinthians 3:10 and ends down there in 1 Corinthians 3:15 actually. Verse 14 says, if any man's work abide, which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. Folks, you're going to be rewarded for your faithfulness, for what you did. Question, what are you all doing? By the way, at this juncture, at this point, I'd like to say, I appreciate everybody in this church that's doing their job. I got people that are so sick they can barely, and they come in and they work in the office and do this and do that, and everybody's working behind the scenes. Everything is still going on. Brother Chris is invaluable in that he does so much and so many things. Everybody is working. Keep doing that. Be faithful. And keep praying for the will of God and the right man to come. Death is a rest. Restful. Just think, when we get there, we live in a place that is so beautiful. The way it smells, the way it looks, the way it sounds, everything about it is better than you could ask or even think. It's better than you can even imagine. And we get to worship the Lord, and it's like rest. We get to rest. It's refreshing. You ever do something that you just flat out enjoyed? You're going to be built at that point with your white robe to worship the Lord. And it's going to be a time. You ever been in a gathering where the fellowship was just so sweet and so good? I have. With people you just like to be around, and you went away feeling good. It's going to be even better than that. That's where you're headed. I can't even describe how good eternity is going to be for the believer on the other side of this thing we call death. But the people that believe not, and they don't know Jesus as their Savior, it's a completely flip side of the coin. Revelation 14 and verse 13. I have 1 minute left, so I stayed on track kinda anyway. Revelation 14:13, and I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, write. Listen to this one. Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord. From henceforth, yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors. And look at this, and their works do follow them. What are you doing for the Lord? Find out what your spiritual gift is and do it. Be a blessing to other people. Be a burden bearer. If somebody trips and falls, help to pick them up. Don't run over the top of them. Pick them up. Help them. As it says in Galatians 6 and verse 1, considering thyself lest thou also be tempted. It might be your turn next time.
That's it. Yeah.
Aren't you glad you're saved?
Amen.
I am.
Jesus.
You are a unique group of people. And I mean that in the extremely good sense. And it's because of this, what you believe, that puts you into an entirely different realm than the rest of what's out there. And we need to find more people out there that will hear and come in here. None of us are here that long. And you better be sure about where you're going. Let's close in a word of prayer.